Super. Well, thank you very much. So this session is kind of available for you guys today, and some of you are here in person, which is absolutely great. Well, remotely, and some of you will be catching up on demand afterwards. So I'm Nicola Callan. I am the founder of a company called BoostHR, and we provide a learning and development, HR, and coaching services to organisations, predominantly in the contact centre space, but recently I've also been working rather randomly with chartered surveyors, primary school head teachers, and a local cafe. So it just kind of varies a little bit, I guess, in terms of kind of who we're working with. But there's one thing that's common with all of the people and the organisations that I work with, and that is that there is kind of this underlying, underpinning, I suppose, need around wanting to work better together. And part of this idea of working better together is to know ourselves so that we know how we work and how we can work well with others. And the session that we're going to look at today is one that's called Why Words Hurt. And this is very much around building resilience, I suppose, in relation to dealing with feedback. And, no matter what we're doing in life or in our working lives, we are going to get times where we get knocks. We are going to get times where we get some negative feedback, perhaps, as well as positive feedback. I'll be talking about that as well. And what I really want to do in this session today is share with you some of the insights into why we respond the way we do when we get certain feedback, and how we can recover safely from some of that as well. So that we're in a better position to be able to move forward and deal with that. So I'm going to be talking for about 15-ish, 20 minutes maybe, and then there'll be a little bit of time at the end for any questions, and I would encourage you also to take some time for some reflection on what you've heard about today as well. And there may well be people joining us as we go along, which is of course absolutely fine as well. So the first thing that I would like you to do, please, is I would like you to bring to mind a time when you have received some feedback. Okay. Now, you might want to grab a pen and paper at this point, or you might want to use some kind of device to type some notes on, or you might just want to sit for a moment and just really think about this, and just take a moment to recall a time when you've received some feedback. It doesn't need to be recent, just a memorable time when you've received some feedback. I want you to really bring it to mind. I want you to picture the event, picture what happened. Where were you? What were you doing? How were you physically? Were you sitting? Were you standing? Were there lots of people around? Were you on your own? What was the other person doing, the person that gave you the feedback? Were they in the same room as you? Was it done remotely? Were they sitting? Were they standing? How was it done? How was the feedback shared with you? And I want you to now really think very carefully about exactly what was said. What exactly were the words that were used when that feedback was given to you? And if you can't remember the exact words, what was the meaning that you took from what was shared? What was your interpretation of that message? And just sit with that for a moment. Just remember it and just sit with it for a moment. And now I'd like you to recall how you felt. How did you feel when you heard that feedback or when you received that feedback? Okay. Now, the first thing to do, just in the chat function, if you don't mind, there's a few of you on here, if you can just pop in the chat box a thumbs up if you recalled a positive feedback moment, and a thumbs down if you recalled a negative or developmental feedback moment, please, just so that we can just get a flavour of what was going on there. Or you can just show me on screen or put your thumbs up or put your thumbs down, either way. Cool, got some in there, that's lovely. Thank you. So when we do this with larger groups, what tends to happen is that the majority of people remember negative or constructive or developmental feedback. The minority recall positive interactions. And for the purpose of this webinar today and this session today, I'm going to talk about developmental and constructive feedback as negative feedback. I appreciate that, you know, we're all kind of educated now to talk about things being developmental and all for our good, and, you know, feedback is a gift and all this sort of thing. But just for the simplicity of the language I'm going to be using, we're going to talk about positive and negative feedback. So the majority of people will think of something that is to do with negative feedback. And the majority of people will not actually remember exactly the words that were used when that feedback was given, but they will remember very clearly how it made them feel. And there's a very good reason for this. And you may well be familiar with a quote from Maya Angelou that, you know, she very famously saying that she's learned that people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And words are such a powerful and invisible weapon. We can use them with almost no visible trace, and we can cut people to pieces with them. And equally, we can use them to build them up, empower them, motivate them, and feel that they can take on the world and do whatever they wish. So even if it's not intentional, even if the person delivering that feedback has every intention of trying to motivate and share a message in such a way that inspires, the gap between an intention and impact is always going to be there. And that is the bit that has the impact on us. It's that message that we receive and what we take away. Now, when we have an experience of negative feedback, and I'm going to come on to this in quite a bit in the following slides, we tend to respond and react in particular ways. And I'm going to share with you some of the reasons why we do that. But before we do that, I just want to share with you, again, something that you may have seen before, you may not have done. And this is the cognitive triangle. So you may well have heard the phrase that our thoughts drive our feelings and our feelings drive our behaviours. And whilst there's a bit more to it than that, it's not actually a bad place to start. Because what we're saying here is that how we think about things directly relates to how we feel about things, which directly relates to our behaviour. So if we are thinking about something, so we're thinking about some negative feedback that we've received, we are going to be feeling negative thoughts if we are thinking about it in a negative way. We're going to be feeling things like frustration, feeling low, annoyed, upset, angry, whatever those feelings might be. And they are going to manifest themselves in our behaviours and the way that we respond then for a period of time after receiving that feedback. If, however, we think of things more positively or more openly, then that in turn is going to change the way that our feelings respond. And when our feelings are more positive, more open, more appreciative, more understanding, our behaviours are likely to be reflected in that way as well. So if you think about an example of, actually, it doesn't need to be in order either. We can kind of skip bits out and we can kind of go around in a different order. But it's just kind of a good premise to kind of get us thinking about these things. So if we take, for example, running, okay, I know that there's at least one person who runs on this call. So if you are thinking to yourself, I really want to go out for a run tonight, kind of this is what I'm going to do. So after work tonight, I'm going to go for my run. And then as you are getting ready to go for your run, you happen to just glance into your living room and it looks really cozy. And outside it's pouring down and the hailstones that we've been experiencing in May have returned. And you're looking outside and you're thinking, I really don't want to go for this run anymore. And you're looking at your living room and it's looking really cozy. If you're thinking to yourself, I really want to get cozy in my living room, so the thought there, the behaviour is likely to be that you're not going to go for that run. If you think, I can't wait to get cozy in my living room when I get back from my run, you're far more likely then, your behaviour is far more likely to be that you will go for the run and then look forward to coming back and getting cozy in the living room later. Now, these are difficult to control, to be fair, but it's really important to know that these three things are all absolutely in your control. You have control over your thoughts, you have control over your feelings, and you have control over your behaviours. And like I say, it's not always easy to do these things, but this is within your gift. And when we kind of look at core psychological needs more broadly, one of the core psychological needs that we all have is this need for autonomy and to have some control in what we do. So knowing that we have control over these things and that we can adjust how we think, feel and behave is something that can be really helpful if you are dealing with negativity, setbacks, frustrations, those sorts of things. It's also really worth kind of pointing out kind of what goes on in our brains when we're receiving negative feedback. And this is just a little bit here on the psychology of feedback. So if you can, for those of you who recalled a time where you had positive feedback before, if you can think of a time where you did receive negative feedback, it would be worth kind of holding that slightly now as I talk through these next 4 areas. So the first one, top left, is not that I can't do maths. I think I can, but I do know that +5 - 1 doesn't equal 0. This is the idea that in order for us to break even with our emotions, there need to be 5 positive pieces of feedback for every 1 piece of negative feedback that we receive in order to break even. Okay? Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that if you were going to be sitting down with somebody that you tell them 5 really positive things about them and then you could tell them 1 negative thing about them and everything's okay, because it doesn't really work like that. Feedback sandwich from the management school of the 1980s and 90s is certainly not the way that we want to be encouraging people to deliver feedback these days. But there is an idea that if 5 different people tell you that you're good at something, and then 1 person gives you some feedback that maybe you're not quite as good at that thing as you thought you were, the chances are you won't take it that seriously. You'll hear it, you'll absorb it, but it won't really affect you too much. Whereas if 5 people had told you that you were really good at something, and then 2 or 3 people told you that you weren't so good at that thing, that would really bother you. Even though 5 people have told you that you're really good at this thing, the 2 or 3 would really go to heart. So for us to break even and to remain neutral in our response to feedback, we need to hear something positive 5 times and it to be negative once. The second thing to say about psychology of feedback is to do with brain power. So when we receive negative feedback, it takes over. And if you think about a time where you have received something, you've had a rejection, you've had a no, you've had some criticism, whatever it might be, might not be in work, it might be in relationships outside of work, whatever it is, it takes over. And you may well relate to this idea that you then sort of ruminate over it, you mull over it, you try and distract yourself, you try and do something else, but it just keeps coming back and you keep remembering about it. And it just doesn't seem to go away. And the reason for that is that when we receive feedback like that, it's triggering the slow part of the brain. So fast brain, slow brain. Fast brain side of things, you know, we're doing stuff on autopilot, we're kind of seeing our way through. So if I asked you to calculate or tell me what 2 times 6 was, you would tell me that it was 12 because you know it, you've learned it. It's something, it's a learned behavior, it's a recall. You can tell me that 2 times 6 is 12. If I asked you what 25 times 36 was, you would either look at me like I was daft, asking me why on earth we'd be asking that question in the first place, or you would then start to try and process that. And in processing that, you would either do the mental arithmetic that's required to be able to calculate that, or you would get a phone out or a calculator out of some description to be able to work it out to then tell me the answer. Either way, both of those activities require the slow brain to kick in. So the other functions and the other activities that our body is doing at that time, that our brain is controlling at that time, have to stop. Because when the slow brain is operating, we can only do the thing that the slow brain is required to do. Apart from breathe, we can always breathe, hopefully. But everything else kind of needs to stop. If you were walking in a park with somebody, socially distanced, whatever you're doing, and you asked them what 25 times 36 was, if they were to work it out, they would stop walking. You can try it if you want to, a bit of fun. You can kind of see what's happening, because they would stop walking, because they would not be able to calculate the risks that were around them in continuing to walk and work out the sum at the same time. They wouldn't be able to tell if there was a dog about to run in front of them, if the pavement was uneven, if there was a tree branch sticking out, if there was a child about to come along. You wouldn't be able to do that and do the calculation at the same time. Now, this is what happens when we get negative feedback. It's all consuming and it's all absorbing. We try and do other things to distract ourselves, but it keeps coming back because that's the way the brain works. It's slow processing. It's there to help us, there to protect us, but that's why it does it. And linked to that then is the chemical absorption side of things. So when we receive positive feedback, we release endorphins in our brains. So chemicals running through our body, all good, happy days. We get positive feedback, we feel good, and we feel good for a period of time. And that period of time will vary depending what the feedback is and how much of the endorphins we've released. Might just be a few seconds, might be a few minutes, might be a little bit longer. When we receive negative feedback, it's a different chemical that's released in the body. And that chemical takes longer for our bodies to process it. So it actually sits within our bodies physiologically for longer than the endorphins do, which means that we are processing that negativity within our bodies for longer, which means that we feel it for longer, which is why we have this kind of constant reminder of, oh yeah, I'm still feeling a bit rubbish about this, because that's what's going on. It's still within us. And then the other element with the psychology of feedback here as well is that we're programmed to scan for danger. Now, what that means is that as human beings, evolution from all those years ago where we were kind of cavemen around the fire and kind of looking out for what we can eat or what we can, what's going to eat us, fight and flight and all that, we are looking out for the things that are a threat to us, which means that, you know, we're really kind, whoever made human beings, that we are kind of looking out for and tuned into the negative stuff more than we're tuned into the positive stuff. And if you think about the times that people give you compliments or say nice things about you, how awkward does that feel? And we just sort of brush it off and we go, oh yeah, thanks. Or don't even say that, we just go, oh, I don't really know what to say. Or someone says, oh, that's a nice, you know, new clothing item, or whatever it is that you've got, a new phone or whatever. And you start to play it down, oh, I've had this ages. You know, we're just not very good at kind of going, oh, great, yeah, thanks very much for that. Thanks for that feedback. We just don't do that very well at all. Whereas if someone just looks at us in a different way, we're like, whoa, we've done something wrong, we've really upset this person, what do we need to do? So we're so tuned in to this kind of negativity side of things, because we're programmed to scan for danger. And this is kind of all linked in also to this idea of the stories that we tell ourselves, okay? So we are very, very good as humans of making up stories. And not only are we very good at making these stories up, we're also very good at absolutely convincing ourselves that they are true. Okay, so going back to this idea of someone looking at us a little bit differently, we suddenly make up this whole story about the fact that we must have offended them in some way, or they don't like us anymore, or they don't respect it, or whatever it might be. We kind of make these stories up. And this again is down to this fast brain, slow brain situation that's going on. And we tend to hone in on what we believe are our known faults. So when we kind of feel that someone is responding differently to us, we immediately go to our own weak point. So if we know that we have a vulnerability around, I don't know, oversharing, being too emotional, being too logical, not tuning into people enough, whatever it might be, we immediately go to that fault point that we've already determined for ourselves, that it must be because of this. Just going to give you an example of how our brains work in terms of making up stories. I'm going to give you 3 words that are completely unconnected, okay? Champagne, balloons, headache. Now there's some smiles there. So I'm guessing that somewhere along the line, there's been some kind of picture of a party and a hangover. Something along those lines, yeah? You've formed a story. I told you those words were completely unrelated. You've put those 3 words together and you've made a little bit of a story or a little bit of a picture in your head. I'll give you another 3 words, same thing, completely unrelated. Champagne, tiger, keyhole. You can't do it. You can't kind of make that story in the same way. It's too difficult to do that unless, I don't know, a tiger drank too much champagne and went through. It just doesn't work, does it? So our brains are really good, even though they were completely disconnected words, unconnected words. You've made a story, as I do as well, we all do it, and then we're kind of hooking onto this idea that there was champagne balloons and a party of some sort, and we convince ourselves that they're true, and they're not, because they're completely random, disassociated words. We make up stories, we become attached to them, we own them, we believe them, and we can choose the stories that we believe. In the same way that we control what we think, what we feel, and how we behave, we can choose the stories that we want to believe. So I'm just going to finish on, I told you it's a quick one today, I'm just going to finish on some hacks that might just help you if you are kind of experiencing some of these things. So psychological, first of all, then we'll go into physical in a moment. So if you are the sort of person that when you receive negative feedback, you kind of go into the why questions. Why is this person saying this thing about me? Why did I do that in the first place? Why did I not know better than to ... Whatever this is, whatever the question is that begins with why, transform it to a what question instead. What could I do differently next time? What has caused this person to come to me today? And when you start to ask those sorts of questions, you get very different answers. So why is this person angry with me? Might be one unhelpful question. What is this person gaining from telling me this? Well, actually, this person might really respect you and really want to help you see a blind spot that you weren't previously aware of and want to help you on your development journey. And that gives a whole different aspect of actually, this person is kind, this person is trying to help me, rather than this person is out to get me. If you've got a fixed mindset, I can't do this, I'm rubbish at this, I'll never lose weight, I'll never beat my personal best, I'll never do this, that, or the other, whatever it might be, that fixed mindset is not going to help in this situation. Growth mindset, don't need to tell you guys this, just adding a yet on the end. I can't do this yet. I don't know how to lose weight yet. I don't know how to beat my personal best yet. You know, it's a moment, it's part of a journey, you get there in the end. And then if you're kind of looking to the past, so psychological again, so if you're kind of looking to the past, looking backwards, just try looking to the future. Try and imagine what the future might look like if you could improve on the thing that you've been given the feedback about. And also remembering that feedback, you don't have to take it on board. Feedback is given to you, it's your choice whether or not you accept it, it's your choice whether you do something with that and you face the consequences regardless. So it's about choosing and kind of what your future looks like. For physical stuff then, if you are prone to rumination, so rumination, playing things over and over again in your mind, then there's a physical hack for this one, which is to move. So physically get up, move, do something else. That might be going out for a run or a walk or a swim or whatever your thing is. It might actually just be standing up from your desk and going and moving and sitting down somewhere else instead. That very active moving kind of breaks up that connection in the brain, and it means that you can then focus on different things. If you're a worrier and you worry about things a lot, you can then allocate time to worry. So when you're worrying, what's happening is your brain is reminding you, your subconscious is reminding you that you haven't yet got an answer to the problem that you're facing. So it's just kind of there going, oh, you haven't resolved this yet, you haven't resolved this yet, you haven't resolved this yet. So allocating time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the end of the day to sit and say, right, this is my time now to think about the thing that I'm worrying about. Don't need to get to a solution. You just need to do another 10 minutes the next day, another 10 minutes the next day until you do. And then every time the worry comes back, you go, it's all right, thanks subconscious. I've actually got my time sorted, it's in my diary, see you later. And you can crack on with what you're doing. It does work. I know it sounds a little bit far-fetched, but it does work. And then if you are doubting yourself, chances are it is the stories that you are telling yourself that you are choosing to believe, confiding in someone else to point out that actually the stories aren't true, or the bits that are true, and the bits that aren't true, and kind of marry those up can be really, really helpful as well. But whatever you decide to do, make the commitment. Invest your emotional energy into doing something different, use these hacks to help, and I promise you that feedback and the pain, the words that hurt that go with that feedback will not be as painful, and you will be able to recover far more safely than you might do otherwise. How am I doing for time, Charlie? There we go, we're done.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's super useful. Thank you. I think there's loads of takeaways from that. I won't try and take the floor too much. I know a lot of us have probably got questions. I've got my own, but I'll hand over first to Helen if you got any questions.
I actually don't. I was just I'm taking it all in and like sifting through it and thinking how I can like implement it. This slide at the end here is very practical, so I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. And the slides, I'll send the slides on to Charlie as well, so you can actually put them wherever you put your stuff and have it as a resource later on.
Awesome,
Perfect.
thank you. Yeah, and I think this is really useful as well. Like, there's a lot of these ones I already do, and I'm like, wow, okay, I'm seeing why I do it backwards. Of like, oh, why do I run so much? Oh, because I ruminate and think about things a lot. Makes sense, doesn't it? So it kind of links the two as well. But I'll go hand over to Rob.
No, that was brilliant, Nicola. It's making me reminisce a lot about a really annoying email I got from a placement application. But one question I would have is when you are in that kind of situation of that you've had that negative feedback, is how do you move on? Because I always sit there being like, oh, I've got to have a growth mindset, I need to move on, but I never fully know how to.
I think it's about choosing your moment. So as soon as you receive that feedback, telling yourself to move on is probably one of the most unhelpful things you can do at that point, because of the things I was saying about the slow brain is kicking in at that point. The chemicals that are going through your body are saying, look, we're here to stay, we're not going anywhere. So fight us all you want, but we're not shifting. So kind of like be a hippo, wallow in it, because that is an important part of the recovery process of negative feedback. So accept and acknowledge that you are disappointed, frustrated, annoyed, whatever it might be, really pissed off, whatever it is, and just kind of go, no, that is how I'm feeling right now. Then if you're still finding that hours later, days later, you're still kind of ruminating over that, then that's when you can start to do some of the physical hacks and the psychological hacks that are on the screen there, where you can just do something a little bit different. We're not saying don't acknowledge your feelings, because we all know that's a really bad idea. We need to acknowledge our feelings. It's just about kind of knowing that there are little hacks that you can do to move that along at the appropriate time.
Awesome. Yeah, that kind of wallowing, allowing yourself to do it is definitely part of the process. If Ryan's got anyone, I think he's got a call right now, but he might have a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, I'm about to jump off, but thank you so much, Nicola, for that. The thought I would leave you with, because I do have to go, maybe an answer for the others that we'll find interesting, is how we can be that narrator for our own stories that you mentioned, and kind of assume that personal power. I know accountability for me is massive. But yeah, kind of, we spoke there a lot about taking control, and we can be that author of our own stories. But yeah, kind of what would that tip be to get to that stage? But yeah, thanks everyone, and thanks Nick. I'll see you soon.
Super, see you soon. Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thought though, of like taking the action, because there's one thing like making a commitment, but then sticking to it is probably another part of it as well. Of like, might say you've done it, but actually taking that step. And I'll hand over to Kyle as well. You got any questions?
Yeah, sorry, my camera was off because I was eating, but it was very good. I don't really actually, because Rob basically asked my question, because I always struggle with, I kind of put my defenses up even before they've given me feedback. So it's like, I don't even hear what they're saying, because I'm like, oh, no. I get like emotional beforehand. But yeah, Rob kind of asked that question for me, so thank you.
No, that's okay, and it's great that you notice that that's what you do, and that in itself might be something just to kind of go, right, okay, what do I choose to hear, and what do I not choose to hear? And if I can take one thing, that's the other thing, we can get a bit overwhelmed with all the feedback sometimes as well. It can be and another thing, and another thing, and another thing, because if the person giving the feedback isn't skilled in doing that, and I run a separate course on that, by the way, but if the person isn't skilled in delivering the feedback in the first place, it's just a car crash, isn't it? It's just awful. And you're not going to remember or want to or have the desire to act on 5 different bits of developmental feedback. So just choose one, just one thing that you actually go, do you know what, I hear that, I could do something with that, and then focus on that. Because it's your choice. It's completely your choice whether you take that feedback on board or not. You might have line managers in the future that tell you otherwise, but believe me, it is your choice.
That's awesome. I think there's one thought that's come to my head real quick on this. There's differences between, I remember seeing someone's post a while back, and I've kind of taken it as a principle of never really giving feedback unless someone asks me for it. Because providing it to someone and being like, hey, look, I think what you're building there is really cool, but you could do it like this, because the words can be so powerful, they can mean it and it comes across in a really negative way, even though you're just trying to help. The intention's positive, but the outcome's negative. So I think on my end, what I always try and do is, if people explicitly ask me for feedback on this, then yeah, I'll be true, honest to you. But if you don't ask me, I'm not going to unwarrantedly give it. I think that's a really interesting part as well, of like, people often say to other people, hey, I really like your project, but you could do it this way or that way, and try and give their opinion when it's not warranted. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally. And feedback, for it to be heard, has to be respected, and it has to be coming from someone who is respected and whose opinion you respect and value. Otherwise, it is just falling on deaf ears. And that's, well, there's loads of examples around that which I won't go into, but yeah, it's got to be invited and it's got to be respected. That said, there are some times in positions of authority where we need to get feedback. So a policeman telling you that you can't go down a particular street because there's been a road traffic accident, and then giving you feedback that you're ignoring them and whatever, that's slightly different. But sure, kind of inviting and respecting is really crucial.
Yeah, definitely. I think the respect part is definitely very true as well, because hear it from the wrong person, you're like, who are you to say that? But hear it from the right person, you're like, yeah, fair game. That makes sense.
Totally. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, awesome. I don't know if anyone's got any other questions. Feel free to unmute yourself. Otherwise, we'll End there. Okay, perfect. So thank you, Nicola. Really appreciate your time today and awesome presentations. Always really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.